You know, I was having too much fun making the Schaeferless Sandwich 6. All of these ranking videos are just so enjoyable because I feel passionate about all of them. Even the Disney Villains one, because at least with that one I got to talk about some artistically rich classic 2D animated films. I really need to remind myself that this is in fact a job, and talk about some recent slop, because my insanely long and detailed analysis of every treasure in the Pikmin series next year isn't gonna fund itself. No, but genuinely, this is an element of Moana 2 I kinda want to discuss that I didn't really go into too much detail on in my initial review. So, the mid-credit scene of this movie. Yep, it sure is a bullshit Marvel-esque tease for the next one, there's no denying that. Basically, to recap if you haven't seen it, the main villain of the movie shows up for the first time. Yeah, throughout the entire rest of the movie, he just existed in a storm form. But here, he's in the flesh, and he vows revenge on Moana for breaking his curse, mobilizing the forces of the vampire bat lady, and I guess Tamatoa, since he also showed up. There's this one review on Letterboxd of Kung Fu Panda 4 that goes, seeing Tigress at the end was the sweet release after 90 minutes of excruciating edging. Look, I don't want to say me when Tamatoa showed up, but I'm also not saying it. Anyway, for such a boring and substanceless movie, the stinger felt like one of the only intriguing bits. It reminded me a lot of movies like Ant-Man and the Wasp or Captain Marvel, which are similarly completely boring and substanceless, but then they end with a tease for what's gonna happen in Endgame. Oh baby! That's how you know it wasn't a waste of time to watch them, I guess. This is the first time I've ever felt this from an animated film. Like, I guess Transformers 1 had a little teasing stinger, but it was earned because of how complete and satisfying the film itself was. Moana 2 is truly the first MCU-esque animated film I've ever experienced. And I didn't really think too much of that fact until I saw the movie's box office, and it really hit me. The MCU is kinda dying. These new movies are not bringing in anywhere close to the same bucks as the franchise's peak. I mean, yeah, Deadpool and Wolverine was a huge hit, but to be honest, I think that's just because people like Deadpool and Wolverine as characters. I don't even think most people knew this was an MCU movie going in. The MCU in general isn't doing too hot financially, and Disney could really use another mega franchise since Star Wars isn't really working out for them cinematically. Well, I think they might have gotten their new franchise. Welcome to the Moana Cinematic Universe. It just makes sense. The thing about Disney and Pixar is that all of their ongoing franchises, thankfully, have not been pumped out at a similar level to, say, the Despicable Me movies. Yes, Toy Story obviously should have ended by now, but at least it takes them like a decade to make a new one. Same with Incredibles, or Inside Out, or even the 6-year gaps between the Wreck-It Ralph and Frozen movies. It really feels like Disney doesn't force any of these sequels to come out immediately. They wait until that original creative team has an idea worth pursuing, and they'll still make money from it eventually, so it's a win-win for financial incentives and artistic integrity, in theory. We're just gonna ignore the fact that most of these sequels are not good, and just acknowledge that at least they didn't get rushed out the door in only like 2 or 3 years. Like, if Disney really wanted to milk Frozen, we would have gotten 4 of them by now instead of just 2. But I think they at least acknowledge the benefits of giving their artists time to cook on these sequels. But Moana 2 is unlike anything they've ever put out before. Everybody knows this is 3 episodes of a canceled Disney Plus series stapled together, similarly to the direct-to-DVD sequels they've put out in the past. But at least they had the self-respect to not pretend these were worthy, new theatrical experiences. By putting them out direct-to-DVD, they made a lot of money, yes, but they also subliminally told us, we respect the artistic integrity of our main studio enough to not pretend this is from the same people that brought you the first one. I mean, you can tell by the animation quality, after all. Moana 2 is not that, because the company's artistic integrity has eroded over time, to the point where they'll shove a half-baked, retooled TV show without the original iconic directors or the original iconic songwriter on board. This is completely different from, say, Incredibles 2, where at least they waited to get Brad Bird back on board before greenlighting a new one. Or Ralph Breaks the Internet and Frozen 2, where they similarly retained the same creative team. Moana 2 is a statement that the brand of Moana is more important than the story of Moana. In my initial review, I talked about the negative implications of them potentially gutting their main studio in order to get films out for cheaper. But it wasn't until I saw that this is the highest grossing animated weekend of all time when I realized, oh yeah, this is their new MCU. I mean, they would be stupid not to from a financial standpoint, right? Plus, Moana is a universe that they could feasibly just expand to infinity. Way more so than most Disney films. Like, Toy Story, they're really running out of things to do with these toys. Finding Nemo, what, is Marlin gonna need rescuing now? Finding Marlin, come on. Frozen, they kind of know that they have to go big and grand with the songs and scope of the story, and that they can't milk movies out of this property too much. The only one I could really see getting hyper-franchised is The Incredibles, but again, they thankfully seem to acknowledge that it's Brad Bird's unique vision that makes that universe so interesting. Moana has the potential to be their golden goose, cause she could feasibly just keep fighting new gods and monsters forever. It's a slightly more action-oriented franchise than any of their other ones, besides Incredibles. And on top of that, they just proved that they don't need a strong artistic vision or good songs for it to make a boatload of money. Just keep introducing new evil gods, make a flat and boring movie where she fights them, and then in the post-credits scene, there could be an even bigger god to fight. Oh no! Rinse and repeat until you make back all the money you lost from Wish. Yippee! A couple of weeks ago, Disney announced that Ice Age 6 was in production. And for a second there, I thought, why? Until I realized that for some ungodly reason, the Ice Age movies continued to make absurd amounts of money, even after the creative well completely dried up. And like I said earlier, Disney doesn't exactly have a mega hit animated franchise on the same level as Despicable Me. Aside from Toy Story, which just doesn't come out as frequently since they're still clinging to the tiniest bit of artistic integrity there. So maybe they want Ice Age to fill that role for them. I suppose it's worth a try from a financial standpoint, but now it kinda seems like Moana is the way for them to go. They can make them for cheap, and since kids are slightly easier to entertain than MCU fans, slightly, the quality probably won't matter as long as the movies look colorful and give kids a good time. It seems to be working in this movie's case. And now I suppose this could have been the part of the video where I bemoan Disney's ridiculous capitalistic endeavors that drain art of their soul and meaning. But honestly, I thought about it, and the thing is, I really don't care. Like, whatever. Disney can do what they want with their properties, and I think it's time to just, move on from anticipating them. If they come out with a surprise really good one, like Encanto, or an actually worthwhile sequel, like Inside Out 2, that's great, and I'll enjoy those movies. But, there's so much more to animation and entertainment in general than what mainstream animation studios can provide. I know this, obviously, but I don't know if you do. That's right, I'm talking to you, Kevin. This is the part of the video where I stop talking about Moana 2 as much, and more so talk about the state of animation and my channel. So if you're not interested as much, we can part ways here. This is more so for people who have been following me for a while now. I've been thinking a lot about my role in the online animation landscape lately, because I don't think it's a stretch to say that I've helped shape it into what it is today a little bit. The thing is though, as much as I enjoy a lot of mainstream animated movies and animation as a whole, it really is not my primary interest by any stretch. My primary interests are musical theater and video games. They're kind of neck and neck, and while film in general is up there, it's like a decently distant third place. I don't really have a particular preference between animation or live action either, but a lot of people assume mainstream animated films are my only interest because that's just the videos I make that get the most attention. It probably also has to do with the funny crab mascot, but I genuinely can't help that. It's not a reference to my love for animation, it's kind of just a holdover and tribute from my YouTube poop days, where you represented your channel with a pre-existing character. Anyway, I've expressed this sentiment a lot in the past year, but I'm kind of burned out from talking about mainstream animated movies, simply because they really are not my primary interest by a long shot. If I had to start over, I would 100% make a half musical theater, half video game analysis channel. And don't get me wrong, clearly large chunks of my audience do like those topics, and that's awesome. But I just keep making videos on animated films alongside my actual deep passions, because hey, it's hard to pass up that opportunity for millions of views. But the thing is, in making these very popular analysis videos on mainstream animated films, I kind of worry if I've closed my audience off from experiencing more of what the medium of animation, or even the medium of film, has to offer. Like, I made my Megamind video because I like Megamind and wanted to share why it's so great. But maybe as an unintended consequence I didn't think of in 2019, calling it a subversive masterpiece might have caused some young people to say, oh, I guess this is the pinnacle of animation and cinema in general. I didn't think anyone would think that way, but I'm increasingly concerned that some of my fans might not have an interest in anything outside of mainstream family fare. Not all my fans, but definitely some. Animation can obviously be so much more. Film can obviously be so much more. But the reason I don't talk about more obscure animated films as much is because, well, talking about Shrek and Megamind is what people on YouTube want to see. Complaining about bad Disney films like Moana 2 is what people want to see. And as long as I share those complaints and don't act like a grifter contorting my opinion to fit what most people think, then why shouldn't I make these videos and get a good amount of views on them? But honestly, I think I've kind of hit my limit with that mindset. I'm gonna still make videos on animated films. It will be silly to stop now considering they're not too high effort. But I really want to use these videos that I know will be popular with a lot of mainstream animation lovers as a way to Trojan horse some recommendations for lesser known stuff. I'm not putting down movies like Shrek or Megamind, because I still love them just as much as I did when I first made videos on them. But I just want to express to some of you that it is okay to expand your cinematic palette beyond them. And believe it or not, this isn't just a random rant I arbitrarily decided to add to a video on the MCUification of Moana. It's actually relevant to that topic. Are you dissatisfied by Moana 2, or Strange World, or Wish, and wish there was more exciting or interesting animated fare? Well, for starters, there are 2 movies in the conversation for Best Animated Feature this year that I haven't seen yet, but look really incredible. Flow and Memoirs of a Snail. I can't speak too much about them aside from pointing out how visually striking they look from the trailers, so these should 100% be on your radar. Hey, Editing James here. I actually got a chance to watch Memoirs of a Snail, so I can definitely recommend it. Yes, it is very, very good. Sarah Snook gives an amazing central performance, and the movie is devastating in terms of its emotions. It's also very much an adult movie with a lot of adult topics, so don't show it to your kids. But if you're a teenager, I think this is a great way to start getting into more mature cinema. Another great animated movie that released earlier this year but flew under everyone's radar is a French film, Chicken for Linda. It's a colorful, fun, madcap, shockingly sweet movie with a ton of heart and humor to it. The plot is just acquiring a chicken, but it's so entertaining and so layered beyond that. Please give it a watch. And if you're already knowledgeable about animation and you want to check out some interesting live action fare from this year, watch Challengers, or Anora, or A Real Pain, or I Saw the TV Glow. These movies can make you feel real, significant, powerful emotions that just aren't fully possible within the confines of modern, mainstream animated films. I know for some of you in the audience, that seems like an obvious thing, but this is mainly a plea for some people in my Twitter replies and the subreddit who only watch mainstream animated stuff. I am begging you, you don't have to settle for just mainstream animated films. There is so much more out there for you to experience. And I'm not gonna act like I'm above mainstream animated films. That would be snobbish and stupid. I loved The Wild Robot, and I really liked Inside Out 2 and Transformers 1. Yeah, these movies deserve to be praised and checked out, but you can't say they're the best films of the year if you don't watch anything else. There's nothing wrong with watching mainstream animated films as an adult, but that cannot be all you live on. Start by watching any of the films on my old best movies of the year lists, or the recommendations I just listed. Plus, I was planning this before I decided to make this video, but I'll announce here that in the first half of 2025, I'm gonna put out a video that's just nothing but recommendations of less mainstream animated films for you guys to check out. I want to try and undo the damage that this flashy title might have caused completely by accident. As someone who really doesn't want to be a leading figure in the animation community, not because I dislike the community at all, but just because it's not really something I'm all that interested in, I figure I should probably start making an effort to help large chunks of this community realize that animation is and has always been so much more than what's popular and geared towards everybody, yes, but kids first and foremost. So, to tie this whole video together, if Disney is content with turning a legitimately great movie like Moana into the start of the MCU for toddlers, then that's fine. As long as the animators aren't crunched, I don't care. And the same is true for Kung Fu Panda 4. Who cares? Go ahead and make more meaningless slop with that IP, because the original trilogy will always be there to enjoy. Just like Moana 1. If good art manages to slip through the cracks at Disney and DreamWorks, that's awesome, but I don't need it to. Because much like Moana, I'm going beyond. There's so much good art coming out from so many passionate artists, and there's no reason to get so hung up about the subpar products of massive corporate umbrellas. Yeah, I'll still make videos about these bad corporate products, but I figured the least I can do from now on is sprinkle in recommendations of good, lesser-known things that you could be checking out instead. This video has plenty of recommendations already, but here's 2 extra easy ones that are currently free on YouTube. Obviously, Hundreds of Beavers, which I already made a whole video on. It's free, it's funny, go watch it. And there's also 2's and Fanny. I'm gonna be talking about this a lot more next year, but I figure I'll get the ball rolling on it right now. If you want a warm, laid-back film with amazing vibes, where not a whole lot happens, and yet it's so engaging regardless, look up 2's and Fanny feature film. It's a wonderful, completely free, independent animated movie for you to watch right now. Enjoy, and see you next year with even more recommendations, both in a dedicated video on them, and sprinkled in throughout my mainstream animation videos. Good night, Tri-State area.